Hey guys, Mark here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to reinvent yourself in 90 days to become rich as F. Whenever people watch videos like this, they start asking questions like, what books should I read? What should be my perfect routine? What habits should I have? But these are all the wrong questions that you should be asking if you actually want to reinvent yourself. All of those three things I just mentioned above, those are actions. And if you try to make lasting change in your life by focusing on actions, it never ends up actually lasting. So instead of focusing on actions, what you really should be focusing on is going to be your identity. Because at the end of the day, everything that you think, everything you say, everything you do is a reflection of your identity. You are always, at any moment in time, you are acting in accordance with your identity. So if you see yourself as a person that is fat and overweight, even if you have a physically fit body, which obviously wouldn't be the case, but even if you did, you would always be acting in accordance with that original identity that you have. So what I'm going to be explaining in this video is, number one, how to build your identity. Number two, how to build a belief system that is conducive to building that identity. Number three, how that belief system is then going to shape your thoughts and emotions. And then finally, at the very end of the video, I'll talk about the actual actions that you can take, practical steps, so that you can actually become rich as fuck. Now, to really build an identity that is going to be conducive to you actually becoming rich and living the life that you want to live, you have to understand that your external world, what you see, the friends that you have, the money that you're making, the body that you have, that is all a reflection of your identity. Your external world is a reflection of your internal world. Now, the only caveat here is I tell this to people and they're like, okay, if I want to be a millionaire, I just need to believe I'm a millionaire, right? And technically, yes, that is true. However, the thing about constructing your internal identity is that it is a lagging indicator of your external reality. Meaning, if you decide today and you actually do act as if you are a super wealthy, successful entrepreneur, let's say, does that mean that you actually are that person? No, of course not. But in the belief system, the thoughts, the emotions, and the actions begin to align with that. And over a period of time, you actually become that person. So this isn't some like woo-woo, like think and grow rich, the secret type bullshit. This is true. This is reality, but it is a lagging indicator. It isn't just like you snap your fingers and you have $1 million in your bank account. That's not how this fucking works. Either way, you have to start with your internal world and be consistent and then act in alignment with your identity to actually bring it about in your external reality. So now the question becomes, at the identity level, who do you actually want to become? You see, the problem with this world is most people are trying to become somebody just so that they have the external validation from others of becoming that person. For example, a lot of people on this planet want to be famous. Like, they look up to celebrities, they want to have the fame, they want to have the success. But when in reality, what they really want is the validation from others that they have the fame and that they have the success. And so the question you need to ask to identify what your real identity is and what you want it to be is this: if money, status, and approval didn't matter, who would I want to become? Ignore all the noise. Ignore what your parents think. Ignore what your friends think. What do you truly want to be? Who do you want to be? Let's say nobody's watching. There's no external validation whatsoever. Who do you genuinely want to be deep, deep down in your soul? Because this is very important, because this can't be faked. If you try to create an identity around something that is not authentic, that is not something that you truly want, what's going to happen? You're going to burn out. You're not going to stick to this identity. And eventually you're not going to actually become rich in the way that you want to. The point here, I removed money. I know this is a video about how to get rich as fuck, but I removed money from the equation. Now, who do you want to be? Question gets a lot harder, right? Because I know a lot of you guys, you're hungry. You want to be rich. You want to have a lot of money. You want to live the lifestyle of a wealthy individual. Well, let's strip that all away. Now what? Now who do you want to be? Because money will always come and go. I know I'm going to make a lot more money in my life, but at the end of the day, my funeral is going to come. It's all going to be gone. And all of that people are actually going to think about and remember is, who was he as a man? Not how much money he fucking had. This is a deep question. So take some time, think about it, and identify who it really is that you want to become. Because once you decide what that new identity is, now the question becomes, how do I actually build that identity? How do I actually become that person? And I put it right above here, but the thing that is going to build your identity is going to be your belief system. Now, here's a funny thing about your belief system and what most people don't realize, and it's actually one of the biggest things that is ever holding them back from achieving great things in life. Your identity is built by your belief systems, but most people don't realize that you consciously can choose what beliefs you want to have about life. But like I said, most people don't do that. They let their belief system be controlled by things like the media. And yes, I mean social media. Most of you don't understand the degree to which social media is controlling your beliefs and the way that you see the world. I also mean the government is partially controlling the beliefs that you have about the world. Fuck that. Also, your parents, your upbringing had an incredibly massive part in building your current belief system. And most people never challenge it. They just accept it as, oh, this is just how the world works. This just happens to be this way, and that's the only way it'll ever be. But that's not true. And this is the main difference between people that are successful and people that are not. The unsuccessful people, they just accept all those beliefs that have been instilled in them by the media, by the government, by their parents, by society. But successful people, they say, fuck that. I'm building my own identity. I'm building my own belief system that is conducive to me achieving my goals. Because here's another little secret. All these beliefs that you have about the world, the funny thing is there's no such thing as a good or bad belief. There's no such thing. The beliefs are neither good nor bad. There are only beliefs that either move you towards your goals or beliefs that move you away from your goals, okay? And there's actually a word for this. A word for beliefs that move you towards your goals is going to be empowering beliefs. And then beliefs that are going to be taking you away from your goals are called limiting beliefs. You've probably heard this term thrown around, but now you know what it actually means. But again, there's no such thing as a bad belief. There's no such thing as a good belief. All that matters is you have your goal and you have to identify the beliefs that are going to be conducive to getting you there as fast as humanly possible. That's it. Now, this all sounds good and dandy, but now the question becomes, how do you actually construct these beliefs? How do you actually build your belief system? Well, let's go back to your new identity here. So my favorite framework for building these belief statements is this formula. You say, I'm the type of person that, and then complete the sentence. I remember when I was getting started, I had so many terrible beliefs about money. And so I would say, I'm the type of person that makes financially responsible decisions. Sounds super unsexy, but dude, just like growing up, I had such an incredible scarcity mindset about money. I had so many terrible beliefs that were instilled into me that I was just holding on to those. So you have to let them go and build new beliefs. I'm the type of person that makes financially responsible decisions. Another example could be, I'm the type of person that is always in good shape. All right. That's another one for me. It is so deeply embedded in my subconscious. I couldn't even change it if I wanted to. And look, I know this video is about mindset relating to getting rich, but getting rich is worthless if you don't have health, if you don't have relationships, if you don't have fucking life. One of my other favorite beliefs that I have is I'm the type of person that always does what he says, no matter how hard it is. This is what I like to call my say-do ratio. So if you say you're going to do something, say you're going to go to the gym, say you're going to work on your business for X amount of hours, say you're going to get XYZ done, how good are you at actually sticking to that? These are going to be different for you because we're all going to have different goals, but this is how you can build those beliefs and embed them into your subconscious brain. Because once you have this belief system, I want you to write this down. Write it down on paper. Something really special about putting a pen or pencil to paper and embedding that into your brain. And after you've done that, you need to understand that beliefs are actually hardwired into your subconscious brain by two ways, okay? Way number one is through repetition. This is where the foundation of affirmations kind of come through. I'm not a huge affirmation guy, but I will tell you, I do repeat my beliefs in my head all throughout the day. I'm not looking in the mirror and like chanting and doing like the whole Tony Robbins thing. That's not my thing. I just want to do repetition, and then the other piece is going to be emotion. So if you study some really successful people around kind of the science and the neurology of success, people like Joe Dispenza, for example, what they say is that repetition alone is nowhere near enough. And what you're essentially doing with these beliefs and this repetition is you're trying to hardwire it into your subconscious, but your subconscious brain doesn't really understand words. It doesn't really understand logical conscious thoughts. But what it does understand is emotion. Emotions are mostly what is embedded in your subconscious brain. Think about it. Think about the last time that you got really, really emotional. Was that like a conscious, logical outcome that happened in your life where you just like some dude cut you off on the freeway and you just fucking flipped him off? You're like, yeah, that was a conscious, logical action that I just took there. No, of course not. It was subconscious. That's where emotions are taking place. So you need to enter the subconscious brain by attaching emotion and actually feeling the beliefs that you have constructed, because that's how you actually embed them so deep into your brain where you can't even break them if you wanted to. Okay. Now there actually is a third thing here, and I didn't mention it because I'll probably lose a few people that are lazy. But what you need to understand is that everything that we're doing here so far with building the belief system, having the repetition and attaching emotion to it, it all sounds great and dandy. Keep this in mind. You haven't done shit yet. Building your belief system is a process and it takes work. And the most important piece here outside of repetition and emotion, that's great. But guess guess what? Now you got to do the fucking work, which means you have to actually act in accordance with those beliefs. Let's take one of my examples where I said, I'm the type of person that is always in shape. Guess what? That means I have to go to the gym all the time, even when I never feel like it. Even when every bone and fiber in my fucking being wants me to stay home, I still have to go. That is acting in accordance. That's the hard part. And that's where most of like the woo-woo people are like, oh, you don't have to do that, man. Just like think and grow rich, like fuck that. All right. You're not going to get rich sitting on your ass. You have to act in accordance with the beliefs that you actually create in your subconscious brain, or else everything's going to fall apart. The law of attraction, guys, I'm telling you, it's very real. But there also is something called the law of Goya, which stands the law of get off your ass. Get off your fat fucking ass and get to work, bro. And the law of attraction only works when you apply the law of Goya to it. Now, if you don't understand why beliefs are so incredibly fucking powerful, let me introduce you to the double slit experiment. This was one of the most impactful experiments in quantum mechanics history. Now, you don't need to know everything about quantum mechanics to understand like the takeaway. In fact, I'm not going to dive super deep into the experiment because I want to make sure the point that I'm making is very clear. But this was an experiment to essentially see if matter would be behaving as particles or as waves. So what happened is these scientists, they went through an experiment. They had this light source going through two different slits. And on the other side, they would see kind of what pattern that light would create, as you can see here on the actual screen. And so they ran this experiment a few times, and then they ran it one additional time where one of the scientists, in this case, we call it an observer, was actually observing the experiment, and he was observing it directly. And what happens is the conclusion of experiment is that when you place an observer in front of this experiment that was happening, the results of the experiment changed. So literally at one of the smallest levels, like the word quantum just means incredibly fucking small. That's the official scientific definition, incredibly fucking small. So at the very, very smallest level that we can possibly understand, the way that you observe matter changes the way that matter presents itself completely. Now, how does this actually tie into beliefs? This was an insane conclusion from this experiment when it was originally conducted hundreds of years ago. But the conclusion here, scientifically speaking, this is not woo-woo shit. This is a scientific experiment. The way that you view the world changes the world itself. So let me give you an example. Let's say that there are two brothers that are born in a particular family, and for whatever reason, something happens in the family. One of the parents, let's say, just completely dies, passes away. Throughout the rest of their lives, one of those brothers ends up, spiraling into depression. They end up never achieving anything great in their life. They end up blaming that main event for the reason that they're not successful. And they just have like this external locus of control. Whereas the other brother, it's the exact opposite. He sees this as the best thing that has happened to him kind of in a weird way, to the point where he was like, you know what? I don't actually have a lot of time on this planet, clearly. I'm going to do everything that I can to live the best life as humanly possible. Two people, almost identical, but they experience the same thing in completely different ways. How is that possible? Well, that's what this experiment is showing. And that's why your belief system is so incredibly important, because the only thing that changed between those two brothers was their beliefs about that particular experience. That is all. So not only can you change your reality just by changing the way you view it, but you can actually make achieving your goals feel even easier than it is in reality by using this to your advantage. And that's what I want to explain. Let's say that this is you right here, and this little thought bubble here is essentially your brain. This external reality that you have right here, as I've already said, it's a reflection of what's going on in your head. Okay? Just take a second and take personal inventory of what your external reality looks like. How much money are you making? What are your friends like? Are they helping you with your goals, or are they holding you back? Where are you living? Are you living in the city, state, country that you want to be living? Are you in shape? What does your health and fitness look like? What does your external reality actually look like right now? Because again, that's all a reflection of what's going on internally. The reason I'm hammering this entire concept so hard is literally because most people blame everything but themselves when it comes to the life that they're currently living. They say, oh, the reason that I'm not a super successful entrepreneur, billionaire, making all the money that I want in the world is because I was born in like XYZ situation. It's because I had a single mom and I didn't really have any money growing up. It's because the government is just holding me back. It's because the media is telling me that no matter what I do, I'm never going to be successful because of the color of my skin, because of my gender, because of anything. I'm telling you, it's all a lie. It's all a lie. The first step in reinventing yourself and taking control of your mind is taking all of this external shit and saying, fuck it. That's not the reason I'm not successful. The reason I'm not successful is because of me and me alone. This concept is called having an internal locus of control. And this is one of the number one traits of successful people. They don't blame anything around them, even if they have a totally valid reason to do so, by the way. The reality is not everybody is born into an environment that is super conducive to making a lot of money. That's true. But again, that doesn't mean that's something that you should be blaming. Let's say it happened. Okay, you were born into unfortunate circumstances. Now what? Are you just going to use that as a crutch for the rest of your life and never achieve anything great? Fuck that. I don't care what you've been through personally. Most people on this planet have an equal opportunity to actually fucking make it. And anybody that tells you different is just trying to control you, control your thoughts, and turn you into a fucking pleb. You have to understand that sometimes you need to say fuck them. The control is in your own hands. Take extreme ownership and develop this internal locus of control, because the unsuccessful people have that external locus of control. They're looking at everything outside of themselves to explain why they're not successful. And at this point, you know that you need to take full responsibility. You know you need to have that internal locus of control. You need to build your identity. And the way you do that is by building your belief system. And what's going to happen is pretty soon you're going to start actually taking action steps, right? You're going to start building that business. You're going to start building that body. You're going to start getting out of your comfort zone, developing relationships, all these amazing things. And what's going to happen is that you're going to get slapped in the face really quickly by something that most people call risk. I know a lot of you guys watching this channel, you definitely know this word because there's a lot of entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs in my audience. But again, the way that we understand risk is so fucking retarded. Because the reality is there's actually two kinds of risk. You have what is called passive risk and you have what is called active risk. Active risk is essentially entrepreneurial risk. It's like the risk that most people know. Oh, you start a business. That means all of the responsibilities on you. What if it doesn't work out? What if you try it and you end up losing money instead of making money? That is all active risk. And the reality is that is just a normal part of life. Risk is part of life, okay? And honestly, the risk that we experience today is nothing compared to the risk that we would experience 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or even tens of thousands of years ago. You think about the risk then, we were risking our fucking lives. Now the risk, I can't even fucking say it without almost laughing. The risk is like maybe losing a little bit of money. Is your physical health in danger? Risk generally, it's so overinflated that society has convinced you that like risk is somehow a bad thing. But anyways, that's another point. That is active risk. But most people don't understand that there's also another side of risk called passive risk. This is essentially the risk of doing nothing. So let's say that there's a little kid named Johnny. Johnny is 18 years old and he wants to start a business, but his parents are telling him, hey, Johnny, starting a business is really risky. It could not work out. Like you should go to college, you should go get a job and kind of live the safe standard route. By the way, this was my exact situation. But I wasn't thinking that what they were calling this active risk was actually risk. I thought the bigger risk was the risk of doing nothing. The biggest risk of all time for me is the risk of being normal, the risk of being mediocre, the risk of being fucking average. That, in terms of a risk, is 100 times riskier than anything that active risk could ever do to me. Can you imagine? Like this thought fucking haunts me. The thought of being average. Can you imagine dying and you just have an average job, average family, average income, average health? Like that scares the shit out of me. And it should scare the shit out of you too. As a risk, that passive risk is 100 times greater than the risk of any active risk that I could ever entail. This passive risk is the risk of staying in the old version of yourself, the old version of you. Same friends, same income, same family, living in the same town, just living the same life as everybody else on repeat. We want to talk about risk? That's the biggest risk that you could ever fucking take. In life, you're either growing or you're dying. And if you're not pushing yourself to actually be proactive risk and putting yourselves in situations of risk, then you're not really that serious about reinventing yourself. And you need to go back to the beginning of this fucking video, decide who the fuck you really want to be. Unfortunately, most people don't see risk this way. They don't see risk as, something passive and as something active. They only see active and then they live the same life and fall into this passive risk trap and just end up dying a mediocre individual. God forbid. And the reason why most people don't understand this is because they have fear. Another 4-letter word that is vastly misunderstood by the public. And once again, this goes back to your beliefs because the media, the government, everybody at any point in time, they're trying to control your thoughts. I know I'm going to sound like a fucking conspiracy theorist, but it is genuinely true that there are people out there that want to control the way that you think. Because if they control the way that you think, it becomes very, very hard for you to do anything great with your life and challenge the people and authority. Do you understand? I hope you can understand the sincerity and the severity in what I'm telling you, because I do believe all of this to be true. Fear is another thing that is just vastly overstated by the majority of media sources. But I actually have a belief, okay? I have a belief that I've installed into my subconscious brain for years and years and years that has served me and made me shitloads of money. That belief is that fear is not real. Yes, I legitimately believe that fear is not real, okay? The only two things that actually are real are, number one, discomfort, and number two, physical danger, okay? To understand any of these emotions, such as fear, the best solution is to look at human evolution. Regardless of what you believe about the creation of the world, it is true that humans individually have evolved over time. The concept of fear is a physiological response to a specific stimuli. In the history of evolution, fear actually did serve our legitimate survival. So thousands and thousands of years ago, humans, we had two goals. Number one was to survive, which was difficult. And number two was, if we survive long enough, we have to reproduce and procreate. That was it. So fear actually did serve us because it was a signal to our brain that, hey, one of those two goals is currently in danger, my survival. That is physical danger. But what's happened since then is that we have evolved so substantially. We've built incredibly successful and thriving societies that this concept of physical danger over time has just diminished to the point where you go about your daily life. You are very, very rarely ever looking into the face of real danger. Very, very rarely. Yet, that physiological response is still occurring. If you have a job and you completely miss a project and your boss calls you, you're going to feel this feeling of fear because you fucked up and you think that, oh shit, I may lose my job. Are you in physical danger? No, of course not. All you have is the pre-installed systems that served us thousands and thousands of years ago to keep us alive as human beings. But some of those systems don't serve us anymore, okay? What most people think they're experiencing as fear is not danger. It's literally just discomfort. We have conflated fear and discomfort. And the cool thing about discomfort is that we know time and time again that the only way for you to grow as an individual is when you are outside your comfort zone. Growth does not happen when you are inside your comfort zone. Perfect example, you go to the gym and you want to get bigger muscles. Cool. You start doing the bench press and you're shooting for, 10 to 12 reps and you get to that seventh rep and it starts getting really hard. Your chest starts burning, shoulders are burning, triceps are hurting. You do another rep, it hurts even more. And then you keep going, it hurts even more, even more, even more. Is that fear? No, that is discomfort. And we know that the best way to build muscles is through putting your body in positions of discomfort. And the same is true with your life and your mind. If you're not putting yourself in positions of discomfort, that means that you are not growing, period. Way too many of you are just comfortable with your day-to-day life, but you need to actively put yourself in positions of discomfort, okay? So most people, they think it's fear. They think, oh, I'm going to start this business. What if it doesn't work? Are you in physical danger? Absolutely not. So what you're really feeling is the experience of discomfort. But this is not a negative signal. This is a positive signal to the brain that, hey, I'm about to grow. I'm about to get better. If you truly want to be extraordinary, let's take that word apart. Extraordinary. What this means is you have to be outside of the ordinary. So the ordinary, the monotonous, what most people are normally doing, you have to be outside of that. If this is comfort, ordinary, mediocrity, you have to be outside of that. Imagine you have these two concentric circles here. Everything inside this inner circle, this is your comfort zone. This is your safe place. And this is where most people live their entire life. But this zone right here, this is the zone of discomfort. And genuinely ask yourself, how much time do you spend in this zone, the zone of discomfort, instead of the zone of comfort? On a daily basis, it's probably not enough. I don't know what the number is for you, but even for me, it's not enough. It always needs to be more, because the more that you're in this zone, the more that you know you are growing. Nobody ever achieved anything amazing without getting outside of their comfort zone. Now, the problem is we have constructed a society that has just ingrained these habits of staying in our comfort zone. And it's not your fault. Most people, they're going throughout their day. They spend majority of their time doom scrolling on TikTok, checking the news, checking media, doing a bunch of bullshit, eating bullshit food, living a bullshit ass fucking life, to be quite honest. But like I said, that's not your fault, but it is your fault if you stay that way. So what we have to do is rewire our brain. Because if you're anything like I was many years ago, my brain was just hardwired into this bullshit way of living, where I was addicted to my phone. I'd be addicted to bad foods. I'd be addicted to all these things that were not serving me and my goals. So you have to rewire your brain to actually be conducive to achieving your goals. And again, what most people do here is totally wrong. They will say, oh, I need to go do a monk mode, or hey, I need to go do a dopamine detox. Look, the reality is people that say they're going to do things, they fall into one of two buckets. Either number one, they actually do stick to the monk mode, which is very, very rare people. They do stick monk mode to the detox. And then after the 30 days is over, they just go right back to living their normal ass life. Nothing changes. That's great. But we want lasting change. We don't want something that's just going to work for 7 days or 30 days or 90 days. No, we're trying to change our entire trajectory of our life. And the other group of people is just people that say they're going to do a dopamine detox or monk mode, and they just basically quit because, let's be honest, it's really hard. What if it could be easy? What if rewiring your brain was something that was not only easy, but it stuck with you for the rest of your fucking life? I want to show you how to do that. And before I do, I need you to deeply, deeply understand this word that you see thrown around everywhere, which is dopamine. Dopamine also is a widely misunderstood neurotransmitter. This is the neurotransmitter in your brain that is crucial for understanding motivation, cravings, and honestly just getting shit done, period. And if your dopamine is absolutely fried, guess what? It's going to feel really hard for you to ever do anything. Like the beginning of this video, it's all about the identity, the beliefs. Now you actually got to get shit done. So what is the easiest way for you to actually do that? So the way that I like to explain dopamine is there's, once again, two kinds of dopamine. And this is not scientific terms by any means, but this is the best way that I can explain it for you, okay? You have artificial dopamine and you have real dopamine. Technically in the brain, dopamine is dopamine. Again, this is just for example purposes. A lot of people also like to call artificial dopamine cheap dopamine. Same exact concept. Artificial dopamine is synonymous with instant gratification. Think about things like social media, where you scroll, you get that hit of dopamine, as they like to call it. Junk food. You have watching porn, being on dating apps, gambling. All these things are that artificial, cheap dopamine, instant gratification. On the other hand, you have real dopamine, which is really what you want to be chasing. This is delayed gratification. Things like exercise, morning sunlight, reading, long walks, or doing deep work or focused work. So dopamine itself is not a problem. What is a problem is how you are choosing to get your dopamine. Because most people are obviously going to be choosing all the artificial dopamine sources. When you do that, you just completely fry your fucking brain to the point that doing anything meaningful with your life feels really fucking hard, because you're basically comparing it to some of the most addictive things that you could possibly do in your entire life. So here's the real difference. The goal with dopamine is not to have as much dopamine as possible, and it's also not to have as little dopamine as possible. It's all about managing a dopamine, not like a retard. So generally speaking, everybody kind of has this baseline level of dopamine throughout the day. This is the line here where the higher it goes up, higher dopamine levels, lower, obviously lower. And this is time here on the x-axis. Now, the cheap dopamine, the artificial dopamine I was referring to, what this essentially looks like is, let's say you wake up first thing in the morning, horrible idea, but you'd get straight to watching porn, right? One of the highest dopamine spiking activities that you could ever go through. And what basically happens is you have this massive spike in dopamine, and then it comes back down very aggressively, and then will level over time back to your baseline like this. Okay. This is what the cheap artificial dopamine represents. And on the contrary, the real dopamine, for example, instead of waking up and watching porn first thing in the morning, what you do instead is you wake up and you get morning sunlight and you go for a walk while, let's say, like listening to a podcast, for example. You're still going to have a rise in dopamine, but instead of it being this massive spike and trough, what it's going to look like is something like this, a prolonged spike and delay over time. This is the real dopamine that you want to be seeking. And the reason why this is so much better for you, if it's not super clear by the chart, it's from a concept called dopamine delta, which is, if you look at the change in dopamine over time, it's incredibly large for artificial dopamine and very small for real dopamine. Let me show you. So if we take the peak here and the trough here in artificial dopamine, this level is essentially the dopamine delta. This is the change in dopamine over a specific time. And as you can see, it's very large. Your goal is to have what we have on the real dopamine, which is to basically have a very small dopamine delta. Not only is this more sustainable, but what you'll notice is if you prioritize activities that have real dopamine, you're just mentally going to feel better. I don't really know how else to put it, but you're going to feel more clear-headed, more level-headed. You're actually going to want to make improvement in your life. If you stack all these artificial dopamine things together, you start to have this really warped worldview to the point where you're like, oh, becoming a better person and like improving my life doesn't even seem worth it. Like, I'd rather just keep fucking smoking weed and watching corn and eating bullshit food. It almost like convinces you that that is like a enjoyable way to live your life. But obviously it's not. And that's not what you want to do with your life anyways. So just to show you how crazy and powerful this is, I created this little software here that shows you the effect of your dopamine over time on your baseline. So for example, let's begin with the artificial dopamine, like scrolling social media, literally off the charts in terms of the spike over your baseline level of dopamine. Watching porn, also even worse. We have binge watching shows, drugs and alcohol, gambling, trading. On the contrary, let's look at the healthy ways to induce dopamine in your environment, like exercise, right? The cold exposure, morning sunlight, deep work and focus. And you can see just how different they look, how different the dopamine delta is over time. Your goal, again, is to reduce the dopamine delta so that you don't have these massive spikes and troughs. And instead, you have a prolonged increase in your dopamine, because that's how you make it feel like working hard is actually easy. The reason, again, that you think that working hard feels so hard is because of what you're comparing it to. Things like porn, social media, video games, like, of course it's gonna feel hard. Those things are fucking awesome according to your dopamine receptors. It's just not even comparable. But if you just remove those things one by one slowly over time, it's gonna feel easy to do the hard things. Look, the reality is these artificial dopamine sources, these are extremely addictive. Let's have some fun, all right? I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Most entrepreneurs, most successful individuals, they actually do have addiction. I think everybody is addicted to something. The difference, once again, between the unsuccessful and the successful people choose what they want to be addicted to. Now, technically, it's not actually an addiction. It's more of a very empowering habit, but I like to think of it as an addiction. The difference between a habit and an addiction is how it affects your homeostasis. Let's say that this line here represents kind of your baseline level of being. An addiction is something that you actually begin your day below your baseline and you don't even feel normal. You don't even feel like you're at homeostasis until you actually have that particular addictive substance of choice. And then maybe if you have it again throughout the day, it'll spike up and then you'll kind of slowly approach the baseline once again and actually even go below it, back to the addictive baseline. Again, this is the definition of an addiction, something where you need to have a particular thing for you to feel normal, just for you to be at your baseline. A habit, on the other hand, is something that elevates your existing baseline. So you actually do begin your day here, and when you participate in the habit, it brings you up here and then slowly brings you back down to your baseline. So it actually elevates your level of well-being. This would be something like, exercise or cold exposure or just doing deep work on your business. I know a lot of people that legitimately have addictions by this definition. They don't feel normal unless they have their nicotine. They don't feel normal unless they have their caffeine. They don't feel normal unless they, fucking stroke the chicken. It's like how they fucking boot up for the fucking day. And then of course, with the addiction, when you're coming back down here, this zone here, right? This is basically the level of withdrawal. Because with habits, if you don't do a habit, you typically don't feel any sort of withdrawal from that. But if you don't have a particularly addictive substance, let's say, you legitimately, your body starts to go fucking haywire, starts to give you all these signals that like, I don't feel normal. And that's a problem. That's why it's called an addiction. Now, I read a book a while ago that was called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And it essentially explains the science of addictions and habits. And it's actually a 3-step process for you to build a particular habit or addiction, depending on how you want to classify it. The first step is going to be the cue. The second step is the habit or ritual itself. And the third is going to be the reward. So let's take an example. I believe I'm addicted to the gym. I have been going for 7, going on 8 years, and it has gotten to the point where if I don't go to the gym, I legitimately don't feel good about my day. Now, that is an empowering addiction to have because obviously it served me relatively well. So what was my cue? Well, my cue most of the time is a little known chemical called beta-alanine. Beta-alanine is a chemical in a lot of pre-workouts that essentially gives you that kind of itchy spiders crawling all over your skin kind of feeling. A lot of people don't like it. Me personally, I fucking love it. Feeling like I don't have control of my skin. Really cool. But for me, that is the cue. And I've been going to the gym for so long that if I start walking to the gym, even if I don't have pre-workout, my body will naturally start producing that kind of like tingly feeling on my skin, which is pretty crazy because I didn't actually consume anything for that to happen. But it's just so embedded psychologically that cue is that powerful. Now, the second piece is the actual habit or ritual itself. So in this case, we'll keep with the example. This is me actually going to the gym, working hard, training, etc. The reward for me, most cases, is that pump, right? It's the feeling where all the blood flow is going to your muscles. You feel like you're way bigger than you really should be. And if you really walked around like you had a pump all the time, you'd probably be king of the fucking world, right? That's kind of the feeling that's created in your brain. That's a reward. And so you can take this 3-step process right here and actually apply it to something that is going to make you more money. For example, one of the best things that you can do, which I'll get to in a second, when it comes to constructing your day, is spending at least 4 hours per day doing your deep work. This is deeply focused, challenging work that is actually going to move your business forward. Usually something related to marketing or related to sales. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and your cue to execute your deep work, for example, is, consuming some caffeine. Yeah, it's an external source and it is a direct signal to your brain that's like, okay, we're about to get into deep work mode. Then you actually do the work, and maybe your reward, for example, is you go outside of your bedroom, wherever you're doing the work, actually go outside and get that natural sunlight, right? So we have super duper natural, real dopamine sources that we're getting while also building this addictive habit loop. So a lot of times for me, that actually is what my deep work cycle looks like, except I take it a step further. I do have caffeine, but as you can see, I work in the dark. That's when I do my best deep work. It's just a screen. I have blacked out windows in my entire room. I have a little bit of caffeine, and I just go straight to work playing very specific music in my ears. For me, that's the cue that I'm about to get really, really high quality deep work done. Then I go through the habit of actually completing the deep work. It's challenging. It pushes me. It's multiple hours long. And finally, I go outside after the deep work is done and I actually see the fucking sunlight. Because now at this point, it's been multiple hours and I haven't touched grass. So I need to go do that. That is the addictive loop that you can create to actually get more money and get shit done, move your business forward, or get that business that you have off the ground. Now, to finish this piece, the final thing I want to say about addictions is that there's a piece that is very, very important when it comes to just doing hard shit in general. And that is your self-talk. This is something that most people never really talk about, but it is incredibly powerful. And I learned from one of my mentors years and years ago. And that is, after you complete something difficult, you should verbally say, either out loud or in your brain, out loud is better, things that affirm your identity in what you just did. So let me give you an example. What I used to do when I was in college, of course I dropped out, but I was in college and I started to hop on the cold shower train. What I would do is I'd work out, I'd actually go to the cold shower, turn it on, and I'd be staring at this fucking 35-degree cold shower in front of me with every bone in my body not wanting to get into the water. Eventually I did, I showered and I finished. And after I'm finished showering, what I'm doing at that point is literally hyping myself up, like word for word. There's some points, it's gonna sound super corny, but I'm telling you that it works. There's a point where I'm like, that's fucking right, motherfucker. Like, I just had this bullshit ass thing that I didn't want to do. I just fucking did it. Why? Because that's the type of fucking person that I am. Again, you may think that sounds stupid and corny, but what you're doing is training your brain to like the difficult thing that you just did. And if you continually do this, no matter how small the thing is, like a cold shower, that's a small thing. But if you're going throughout your business and you, for example, you have to let somebody go in your business, that sucks. But it's something that just has to be done sometimes. And you reinforce yourself with, damn, that really just sucked. So uncomfortable. But guess what? I still did it because that's the type of person that I am. I'm the type of person that just does hard shit because that's how you move your life forward. So control your self-talk post-habit, post-difficult thing. And you'll actually start to build that addiction framework stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where you, in a very sadistic way, you want to go do difficult things all the time just because you have ingrained that loop so deeply into your brain. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, Mark, this all sounds great, but like, what about goals? How are you going to get to a goal setting tutorial? What is going on here? We're just talking about identity and all this fluffy stuff. Look, I'm telling you what you need to hear, not what you came to YouTube searching for. All right. This isn't a video to spike your fucking dopamine. This is a video to get you results. This is what I think about goals. I have been on both sides of the spectrum before in terms of goal setting. I've been psychotic about my goals where I would set a 12-month goal, a 6-month goal that's alignment with the 12-month. then the 1 month goal, and then the weekly goal that I need to achieve my monthly goal. And then I'll chunk that down to the daily goal that I need to achieve my weekly goal, that I need to achieve my monthly goal, to achieve my annual goal. It got so retarded to the point where I was spending more time working on my perfect goal setting system than actually putting in the work. And ironically, when I was at that end of the spectrum, just obsessing over the goals themselves instead of the work and the process and the inputs, I had the worst rate of actually accomplishing my goals. And here's the reason why. It's going to sound a little woo-woo, but I 100% believe it to be true. If you're always saying about your goals, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, okay? Let's say you want to make $10,000 a month and you just repeat to yourself, I want to make $10,000 a month. I wanted to make $10,000 a month, or even I'm going to make $10,000 a month. If you think that's any better, guess what? It's not, because this is the way that the universe works. Okay. The universe, like I said, is always going to be reflecting back to you what you have in your brain yourself. This little brain right here, yes, I know it looks weird, but that is your brain. Whatever you have going on inside of there, the universe is going to return that back to you. So think about this. If you are constantly saying, I'm going to make $10,000 a month, what are you telling the universe? Right now, I'm currently not making $10,000 a month. And so you're just reinforcing a reality in which you actually don't have your goal achieved. That's why I'm so adamant about building the beliefs specifically around the process, okay? These beliefs that I wrote down here, notice none of them say, I'm the type of person that makes $10,000 a month. They're all focused on process-oriented goals, because the moment that you obsess over outcomes is the moment that you are attached. In the universe, God, whatever you call it, they're not big fans of the concept of attachment, because that means that you're just reinforcing your existing reality instead of letting your existing reality go and moving forward to the reality that you actually want to create. If you say, I'm going to be a millionaire, I'm going to be a millionaire, you're just telling the world, telling the universe, telling God, I'm not a millionaire, I'm not a millionaire, I'm not a millionaire. And that's going to continue to be true if you set goals and think that way. So let me tell you the way that I actually set goals, okay? Because I do still set goals, but I do kind of like the mailbox strategy. Imagine if you're mailing a handwritten letter to one of your friends, right? You write the letter, you put it in the mailbox, and then guess what? You don't think about it again until the person actually receives that fucking letter. You're not like checking the postal tracking code every 5 minutes on your phone, refresh. You just put it in there and you let it go, because you know that eventually that letter is going to reach that person. You have full faith that the letter is going to reach that person. You get where I'm going with this? So let's say I wanted to have the goal of making, $10,000 a month. What I'm going to do is I'm going to know that this is my goal. I'm going to set it into my brain, and then I'm not going to fucking revisit it until basically it's accomplished. And instead, I'm going to focus all that time that I would have spent on the perfect fucking goal setting system. I'm going to spend all that time on one very, very important thing, which is the inputs, okay? At the end of the day, you can't actually directly control if you're gonna make $10,000 a month. I know that sounds really weird because what about extreme ownership? But no, we're talking about goals, psychological, universe, woo-woo shit, okay? You can't directly control making $10,000 per month, but what you can control is your own actions, your own thoughts, your own emotions. So instead of focusing all your time on, like I said, obsessing over the goal, you obsess over the inputs. The question you need to ask is, how many units of input would I need to do for it to be unreasonable for me to not achieve my goal? This is a framework taken from Alex Hormozy, and I love it so much because it puts all of the power in your own hand. Let's say you're running an SMMA, right? A social media marketing agency. You just got started. You're trying to get to $10,000 a month. The question you should ask yourself is, for example, how many client outreaches would I need to do for it to be unreasonable for me to not hit my goal? Whatever that number is, maybe it's 500 outreaches a day, maybe it's 1,000. If you did 1,000 outreaches a day for 30 days, do you think it would be unreasonable for you to not be able to close a few for a total of 10K per month? I do. You may think that's overkill, but good. You probably need to do a lot more reps than you actually think. Now, at this point in the video, we have talked deeply about the identity, deeply about the beliefs, and even relatively deeply about your thoughts and your emotions. Now, I want to spend some time to talk about controlling your emotions and actually constructing your day through your actions in a way that is actually going to help you reinvent your life and get rich as fuck. So now that you kind of understand how to rewire your brain to actually enjoy doing hard things, let's build a daily protocol that you can follow to actually bring these things to life and achieve the goals that you want. Success, broken down to the simplest form, is a game of stacking experiences, failures, and learning in as little time as humanly possible. But even if you're super duper motivated, if you sit down on your computer and you have no idea what the fuck you should be doing, you're like, cool, Mark, I got my deep work. You sit down, you're like, now what? Well, Let's talk about that. I want to introduce you to the concept. This is something that I actually coined myself, I think, unless somebody came up with it before me, but concept of Stoic sparring. I am a huge fan of Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, people like that. I think they give you great frameworks for how to handle the challenges in life, even though they lived thousands of years ago. Stoic sparring is one of the simplest and best ways for you to identify what you should be worrying about and spending time on and what you should not. And all you have to do is get out a piece of paper, make a T-chart like this, and on the left-hand side, you're going to write the word outside, and on the right hand, you're going to write the word inside. And what I want you to do is basically do a mental brain dump, all the things going on in your life or in your business onto this sheet of paper. And everything that is genuinely outside of your control, you are going to put over here on the left-hand side, and everything that is inside your control, you're going to put over here on the right-hand side. What you'll notice is that a lot of pain and suffering in humans, in your own mind, you're worrying about things that are completely outside of your control. And the Stoic sparring exercise is to write down all those things, to get them out of your complex brain, because as soon as you get it onto your brain and onto paper, you can actually completely let that thing go. So this is literally an exercise that I try to do at least on a weekly basis, and oftentimes just get out of my head. So for example, if there's somebody in your life that is causing you some mental trouble, right? You can fill that in whatever way you desire. But you got somebody that's taking up mind space in your head. The question is, can you control the way that person is acting? Can you control the way that they're making you feel? And the answer to that, of course, is no. You cannot control what other people are going to do. You can only control yourself and how you are reacting to things. So what you're going to do is you're going to write down exactly what happened with that particular person and why it's bothering you so much. Take some time to think about it, and then all you're gonna do is let that shit go. I know it sounds very simple, but I actually want you to feel the emotions of that specific thing that you're going through. Like, fully feel it, don't avoid it. Feel that emotion, write it down, and then let it go. And never think about it again. Then on the right-hand side, you're gonna write down all the things that actually are in your control. And what's funny is that when you go through this exercise, what's gonna happen is you're gonna have all these things on the left-hand side of the column. So much shit that you were worrying about, that you were spending all your precious mental space on, that you have zero control over. There's nothing that you could do. And yet you're spending energy thinking about them, trying to problem solve them when there's nothing that you can do. And then this side over here is going to be very, very short. And these are actually things, of course, that are inside of your control that we're going to apply to our daily framework of execution. So this really helps you do a few different things. Number one, it helps you actually get clarity. A lot of times you think you know what you need to do, but you don't. And getting clarity is incredibly helpful for that. Number two, it helps you to prioritize. And you'll actually know what is the most important thing that you should be working on. And number three, of course, the last step here is going to be, now that you have the clarity and you have the priorities, now it just comes time to execute. Simple as that. Now, I want you to look at this title. I included the number 90 days for a very specific reason. 90 days is a very short period of time. So for me, the question becomes, how can I squeeze as much experience and information and learnings as possible into that 90-day time frame? And that is how I came up with the concept of XP farming. XP farming is the process of taking what would require most people years and years and years of experience, of failures, of learnings, and shrinking that into a very condensed period of time. What if you could live 5 years worth of experiences in a span of 3 months? How quickly do you think you're going to grow? How much smarter do you think you're going to get? How much more maturity do you think you're going to gain by getting more experience? You see, wisdom is not acquired through time. Wisdom is acquired through experience. And XP farming is basically acquiring more, XP in a very, very short period of time. Now, fair warning, this experience is oftentimes painful, oftentimes very difficult, and a lot of people will give up because it's so much frequency. It's like you're experiencing 10 times the number of failures as normal, 10 times the number of rejections, 10 times the number of experiences, of learnings. So it all depends on how you frame that, of course, but this is supposed to be a relatively intense 90-day period. This isn't like, all right, think and grow rich, Mark. I got my belief system. I'm just going to sit back and eat Cheetos for the next 89 days because I watched this video. No, fuck you, number one. Number two, we want to get better, and we are trying to squeeze as much experience and effort into as short a time frame as possible. The issue is most people expand the time that it takes to get a particular project done for no good reason. Okay, this is called Parkinson's law. If you say, all right, I have this project I got to get done, I'm gonna set aside 4 hours, it's going to take 4 hours. On the contrary, if you have that same project and you say, I only have 1 hour, I have to force myself to finish this project in an hour, you come up with more creative ways for you to execute that project at the same level of quality. The big caveat people have here is like, okay, Mark, if I'm going to do like 10 times the amount of work and effort, I'm going to sacrifice quality. Wrong. That is the one thing that you cannot sacrifice, which is why I said you have to be more creative with how you are executing these particular projects. For example, I'm the Run More Ads guy. If I needed to make 10 ads fully edited in a span of 90 minutes, I'm going to have to come up with more creative ways than my traditional process of, scripting with AI, sending it to video editors, etc. I probably have to build some kind of AI workflow to do the editing for me. But it forces you to ask these questions and to build better processes so that you can execute the project faster. This is like you go to the gym and you ask like the biggest dude there, you're like, hey man, how'd you get so jacked? Did you do like low number of reps with really heavy weight? Or did you do like a ton of fucking reps with really lightweight? The answer is fucking both, okay? You have to lift a lot of fucking weight and you got to do a lot of fucking reps. There's no way around this. The same applies to your work. It's going to be painful. It's going to be uncomfortable and maybe even uncomfortable for your bank account. But as we said earlier, if you're in an area of discomfort, then you know that you are growing. So how do you actually construct your day in a way that kind of enforces this XP farming process? Well, this is a super interesting area for most people because I've seen crazy fucking schedules and I've seen incredibly simple schedules. And I can tell you this because I've done both. And I can tell you with 100% confidence, if your schedule looks anything like this, where you are micro planning out every hour of the day, even every half hour of the day with an insane level of specificity, this, plain and simple, is not the schedule of a high performer, period. The main reason for that is because it is generally not sustainable and it is not prioritizing the most important areas of your day. See, this is what most people don't understand about schedules. It's not a game of being psychotic about your tracking and playing out your day. That is addition. Having the most effective day possible is rather a game of subtraction. So on the contrary, let me show you generally what my days look like. This is it. Yes, this is literally it. So I wake up relatively early and I do my deepest, most impactful work from the time that I wake up until the time that I go to the gym. Then I work out. Typically that'll take me around 2 hours all in. Then I go back to work, not the deepest work, but just other administrative related work that I have to do throughout the day. And then I block off my sleep. That's it. Do you see how simplistic this is? This is almost like a fucking caveman ass schedule. But this is the one that is most sustainable. And most importantly, this is the one that is most effective in you achieving your goal. So what I want you to do is plan out your day and begin with the most important thing, which actually before deep work, most important is going to be sleep. Because if you're pushing yourself really hard in your deep work, it is mentally exhausting. Like the goal of your day is to do two things. You should be, number one, becoming mentally exhausted. Like think about if you're to go run a fucking marathon, but you're going to do it mentally, you're exhausted. And of course, the second is to be physically exhausted. If you go to bed every night and you are mentally and physically exhausted, not only will you sleep substantially better, but you'll fall asleep almost immediately and you'll actually be properly recovering throughout the night. Like I understand that in life, there are phases where you have to sacrifice sleep. I still don't sleep super duper well generally, at least in terms of the pure number of hours that I get per night. However, I do know I'm properly recovering mentally and physically simply because I don't have any time to not do so. Like I am asleep the minute that I hit the bed. And if you're pushing yourself as hard as you possibly can during your deep work, then that is how you can actually maximize your sleep. Like you have to maximize your waking hours if you want to maximize your sleep. If I just laid around all day, didn't do anything mentally or physically, my sleep is going to be pretty shitty. After you time block in your sleep, you're going to time block your deep workout, and then you're going to time block time for your health, and then backfill with anything else that you have to do. It's in that order. 1, 2, 3, 4. So sleep, deep work, health and exercise, and then everything else. And just so you know, deep work, this shouldn't be something, this isn't just like working focused. Like deep work is something that should be pushing you intellectually. If I was doing work that a VA could do, and I just did it first thing in the morning, listening to specific music, that would not be deep work. That would be retarded fucking work. So instead, you have to identify things that are difficult and that are actually going to grow your income, period. This is not time to be doing anything else other than accruing skills that are going to directly make you more money. That is it. And you have to be ruthless with this time for deep work. You have to be absolutely ruthless, which means No phone, no distraction, no YouTube, no Twitter, no fucking scrolling social media, nothing. This time is going to be different for everybody. For me, I like doing this time in the morning because I'm up before a lot of my team, which means I don't have to, check Slack and worry about answering urgent messages because I can just straight up work for hours on end. But for you, the time where you're most productive, most effective, and the sharpest mentally, that may be like from 11 p.m. to like 3 in the morning. I have a lot of team members that is their time. That's like totally blocked off for them. Doesn't matter what time of day that you have it. What matters is that you do it daily, regardless of if it's the weekend or not, and that you're focusing specifically on money-making activities. The final thing I want to say about deep work is you actually can make deep work easier if you have an environment that is conducive to conducting said deep work. This should be unique and personalized to you. I can tell you what my environment looks like when I'm doing my deep work. Number one, blacked out curtains in my room. I live actually in an area, I live in Miami. It's sunny out, there's a lot of sunshine. I personally like working when not even light can distract me. I like working in pitch black with typically binaural beats playing in my ears, and everything around me I am constructing intentionally. The very mouse that I'm using is intentional. The keyboard that I'm using is intentional. My ultra wide monitor, everything I chose for a specific reason because I want it to be satisfying. One of the processes of making a habit actually stick is to make it satisfying. Make it something that is actually like legitimately enjoyable to do. Like, this is gonna sound so weird and corny, but the keyboard that I use, fucking love. Like, I just love sitting down and typing at this keyboard, regardless of what I'm doing. If that's true, then I'm gonna want to work. My brain is like psychologically craving the feeling of me working and me typing on my keyboard and clicking my mouse and looking at my screen. I'm creating all these psychological positive responses for me to execute my most important work as easy as possible. And the best part about this is there's a lot of people out there that are they classify their work as like they're grinding. They're like, oh, just like grinding so hard, man. I'm just like working like 12-hour days, just like grinding. I fucking, like, it's so hard. I fucking do it. And like me, on the other hand, this shit is easy for me. Like, a 12-hour day is light because of the environment that I've created and the psychology around everything in my environment. One of my favorite quotes is, the man who is in love with walking will always walk farther than the man who's in love with the destination. And most of the people that are grinding, they're not in love with the process. They don't like the work that they're doing. They don't like how they're doing it. They're just grinding for the money. If you compare that person to someone like me, where I genuinely enjoy the process of getting better, my environment is just like so fun to be in all the time, I'm gonna kick that dude's ass. And not only that, but I'm gonna be around for years and years, decades, while that guy's gonna get burnt out in the span of 6 months or even like a few years. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna have more longevity because I actually enjoy what I'm doing. That is an ultimate fucking life hack right there. So next, let's talk about the physical side of things. Most of you are neglecting your body, and that's the reason you feel like shit all the time. That's why mentally you're not sharp. That's why you can't focus, why you're unmotivated. We all know it, okay? Health is wealth. And the way that you feel physically is going to impact the work that you're doing mentally. So if you're out of shape, if you're sluggish, if you're eating like shit, your brain is going to be reflecting that. There's a lot of people that will say like, oh, like getting rich is, so much more important than getting in good shape. Money can come and go, but if you lose your health, guess what? You're in the dirt, bro. I believe that when it comes to health, simplicity is king. So let's just go piece by piece here. Number one is going to be going to the gym. Go for a minimum of 5 times per week and just do everything that you know you should be doing, which is train close to failure, if not directly at failure, track your progress, and continue increasing the weight, aka progressive overload, because number one, that's how you build muscle. Number two, progress is fucking addicting. And again, this is all about creating those addictive loops. It shouldn't feel like going to the gym is something that's like, oh fuck, I gotta go to the gym today. No, you like do your deep work and you're like, I'm so excited to go to the gym. Like, this is the perfect rest, like a rest that I need before I get to the rest of my day. But literally just like pushing yourself, becoming better in that way, week after week, it's fucking addicting, man. Next is going to be nutrition, right? Once again, most people, you know what you need to do. Don't get sucked in to all the bullshit health fads going on, whether that's carnivore, animal-based, vegetarian, fucking, I don't even know what other ones are going on right now, paleo, like all this shit. Just stick to eating at least 80% whole foods every single day. And honestly, I'm a pretty big fan of keeping your daily diet relatively monotonous. If I had like a really good meal, I'll eat that meal multiple times per day, every single day. Now, it's not great for you long term because for your gut microbiome, you should be introducing new foods. But the point is, eat real foods and try to get, for muscle building purposes, at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, if not at least 0.8. Next is going to be your sleep. Now, This is one I've gotten a lot of shit for before because I have unpopular opinions on sleep. For the majority of the time, you should be sticking to the schedule that I said above, which is getting your whatever hours of sleep that you need, because everybody's a little bit different, going to bed and waking up at the same time every single day. When you do go to sleep, keep the room as dark as possible, as cold as possible within your general levels of comfort. But I will say this, there's two kinds of sleep, okay? There's times where you need to sleep for your body, and then there's times where you need to sleep for your soul. And this is where I lose a lot of people, because as soon as I say that sometimes you're gonna get less than 8 hours of fucking sleep per night, all the Huberman nerds come after me and say I'm fucking stupid. Look, I believe that sometimes it is better for you to stay up and sacrifice portions of your sleep to feed your soul, not to feed your body. But let me tell you, some of my favorite days of my entrepreneurial journey, I can visualize them. I remember exactly where I was. It's when I stayed up because I was feeling so good, in such a state of flow. And I was working on building something amazing. I was working on building my business. And it was, 2 a.m, 3 a.m, 4 a.m. I'm listening to amazing music. I just feel good. I didn't want to go to sleep. Okay? Not everything in life is meant to be so monotonous. Some rules were meant to be broken some of the time. And sleep, I think, is one of those rules. So maybe that's only 5 to 10% of the time, but I do believe sometimes you sleep for the body, other times you sacrifice that and sleep for the soul. Next on the list regarding health is going to be one that's not talked about a lot, intentional discomfort. Every single day, you should be pushing yourself to do something that is uncomfortable physically. So I know generally speaking, there's not a lot of physiological benefits for things like ice baths, for example. Like a lot of times, in fact, they can be counterproductive to something like hypertrophy and muscle growth, which there's definitely validity to that. However, you should be aiming to do something difficult daily outside of your comfort zone, not for what it's doing for your body, but what it's doing for your brain. There's a part of your brain called the AMC. It stands for the anterior midcingulate cortex. This is the part of your brain that expands when you are pushing yourself to do hard and difficult things. And the reason you need to prioritize this is because, again, this whole video is about how can you make your goals, achieving them, feel as easy as possible. Well, if you're continually pushing yourself mentally through something physical, let's say an ice bath, like ice cold, you don't want to do it, but you do it anyways, you're training your brain to get better at enduring difficult things. And that is going to be reflected in your work. That's going to be reflected in your relationships. You're just always going to be making progress to something that's going to make you better, regardless of how difficult it is. So whatever this is, cold shower, 100 push-ups a day, max deadlift, I don't care. Just make it something difficult physically to prioritize this part of your brain. Now, lastly, on the topic of health, biohack these nuts. What do I mean by this? I think the biohacking space is 80 to 90% bullshit. If you really take off the veil, most of it is just marketers and salespeople trying to sell you something. But that's not even the worst problem. The worst problem is that the biohacking industry has convinced you that the only way for you to perform at your best is if everything in your physical body is hyper optimal. If there's a day that goes by and you don't get your perfect 8 hours of sleep, or your diet wasn't 100% on track, or you didn't take the right supplements, the right peptides, the right nootropics, and that is the reason why you're not able to perform at your best, fuck that. That's such a shitty ass mindset to have. Kobe Bryant has played professional NBA games on 0 hours of sleep, not a few. 0. Michael Jordan had his infamous flu game. Steve Jobs gave his commencement speech while battling cancer. Sometimes the one thing that should be holding you back, you just have to say, fuck that, I'm gonna perform anyways. And that's why I don't like the biohacking industry in general. And what you probably need is less optimization. And you just gotta embrace the mindset, fuck it, we ball. More people need to be saying that, man. Only legendary things happen after you say that anyways. Now, at this stage in the video, we have the identity. We have the beliefs, we have the thoughts, we have the actions. Now there's one last thing that we need to master in order to really reinvent yourself. And that is going to be, of course, your emotions. Emotions are really tricky. They're always trying to trick you. They're always trying to play games on you, tell you that things are worse than they are, or things that are better than they actually are. So let me begin with this. When you start executing on everything I've given you in this video, here's what you're gonna see. If this is day 0, essentially today, and this is 90 days from today, what's gonna happen is over time, your actions are going to be improving. Everything that you're doing is going to be all the right things, right? You're taking the right actions, your health is in check, you're doing your deep work, you have your identity set, everything there is good. These are essentially your inputs. This is what is actually within your control. The results, however, the outcome, the stuff that is outside of your control, that's not going to happen right here. It's not going to happen right when you start your journey. It'll probably be a little area right around here, and then it's going to absolutely hockey stick. Again, these are your actual results, the outcomes. What this means is that this entire area right here, this part of the chart here, this is all where you're acting like a winner. You're doing all the right things, yet you see none of the results. A lot of people call this a pit of despair because this is where most people give up. You're doing all the right things, you're acting like a winner, but maybe a month has gone by and you haven't made any results yet, or maybe 2 months have gone by, maybe even 3. For some people, it's years have gone by and they don't have the results that they want. But this inflection point right here always comes if you actually stay consistent. This is the space in which God, the universe, etc. is testing you, seeing what you're really made of. It is your job to remain consistent regardless of the results that you have, and especially the results that you don't have. That's why it is so incredibly important to detach from your emotions during this period. Only attach emotions to things that the emotions have value for. So the way that I like to view emotions is that they're not good or bad, they're just kind of signals. The way that you should view emotions, for example, if you feel really frustrated, you fully feel that sense of frustration. Don't try to avoid your emotions. Even Stoicism itself says that you shouldn't avoid your emotion. Emotions serve a purpose in many cases. What you should do though is have conscious awareness of that emotion. Let's say it's frustration in this case, and ask yourself this question: does this emotion serve me? If the answer is no, then you completely let that emotion go and you keep moving. If the answer is yes, then you utilize that emotion in a productive way. So frustration, obviously, that is not a useful emotion. So you just feel it, you let it go, and you get back to work. That's it. Simple as that. Anger, for example, however, is an emotion that can be incredibly productive. So what you can do is you fully feel this sense of anger. Get angry. Feel it. Then you ask yourself the same question: does this serve me? Well, a lot of times the answer to that question is yes. When there's a project that you need to get done and you actually do need to stay up and sacrifice a little bit of your sleep, it's not going to be super motivating to think all positively, fucking flowers, rainbows, puppies. No, get angry, use that emotion productively, and get to fucking work and work for the next 4 hours straight because you're so pissed off you haven't made it yet. That is an effective, productive emotion. Then, after you fully channel that sense of anger, just let it go. Simple as that. This is also a healthy way of dealing with emotions, because if you try to keep an emotion like anger bottled up inside, you don't give it anywhere to flow freely, like within your work, then guess what? You're going to end up lashing out in a terrible, terrible way, either on yourself or other people. Instead, use that sense of anger to fuel your productivity. So again, the process is have conscious awareness of the emotion. Ask, does this serve me? And either let the emotion go or keep moving. And as I said previously, the man who is in love with walking will always walk farther than the man who is in love with the destination. This entire process here, where you're doing all the work, all the inputs are there, but none of the outcomes, this shouldn't be you grinding. Grinding as a verb is the breaking down of something. Like if you grind up a particular substance, that means that you're breaking it down. Do you want to break yourself down? No, of course not. What you're trying to do is build yourself up. You already broke yourself down in the beginning of this video when you reconstructed your identity. Now it's time to build yourself up. If you're not enjoying the process of getting better at a specific thing, then you're not working on the right thing, or you didn't construct the right identity in the first place. Fall in love with the process and the outcomes will take care of themselves. I promise you. Now, the final thing I want to say in this video is about taking L's. When you go through this process of reinventing yourself, especially when you combine the concept of XP farming, you're going to be quote unquote failing quite a lot. And for a lot of people, they don't really know how to deal with failure. We didn't really get taught how to deal with failure growing up. So here is a very simple and short 3-step process on how to handle failure. Step number 1 is going to be the reframe. As I've said, I think before in this video, nothing in life is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. If you experience something as failure, that is you already pre-assigning a particular experience as something negative. But nothing is negative. Nothing is positive. It just is. So you can reframe things that you currently perceive as failure as things that are actually stepping stones to success. I know it sounds really cliche and stereotypical, like failures are like the stepping stones to success, but there is some truth to it. Like every cliche, every stereotype has at least 1 ounce of truth to it. So instead, reframe failure as just acquiring XP. You just got more XP, bro. You just leveled up. That is a good thing. That's a positive signal. Now, step number 2, don't detach from your emotions. Now, I know what you're thinking. Mark, you just had a section on emotional detachment. What does this mean? Well, the reason I said don't detach from your emotions is because detaching makes it sound like you should not acknowledge your emotions at all and just be like this super duper logical, rational being that never experiences emotions. Emotions are part of the human experience and you can't avoid them. At some point, they're going to hit every single person. So the point is not to block them or to shove them deep down inside. No, the point is to feel them, as I said previously, and ask, does it serve me or not? And then move on. And the third and final step here is what I like to call feel the power. For some reason, if you flip your mindset to like trying to avoid failures versus saying to God and the universe, give me more failures, you ironically get even less. Like you get less L's, but you just put yourself in a position of power. So like if something really, really shitty happened to me, like I launched this business, it fails, I lose $10,000, right? Most people see that as a failure. If I have like the weirdly fucked up mindset and I'm like, that wasn't shit, give me more of that shit. That wasn't fucking anything. I'm ready. Like give me more. God, universe, give me more. If you flip your mindset into something like that, you just gave yourself power in what most people would consider a negative experience. That's insane. Like the fact that you can just do that at will. You can. Nobody said that you can't do that. You can. All in the control of your own mind. Feel the power and then use that energy to move on to whatever the next project is for you. You should want to be tested. You should want your strength and your perseverance tested because that's how the strongest warriors are actually created. So at this stage, if you follow everything that I've said thus far in this video, you will be able to reinvent yourself to become rich as fuck in 90 days or less. Now, for a lot of you, the question becomes like, what is the actual proper vehicle that I should be in to get rich? Because a lot of this video was about mindset. What about the tactics? If you want to know like the best business that you should be starting and working in and how to actually apply that tactically so that you can become rich, I do have a linked video here. It's going to be somewhere on the screen. Do me a favor, please check out that video, put a lot of work into it. It'll actually help you get the tactics of everything, not the mindset, because at this point you already have that. But for the tactics, go ahead and click that link again, somewhere around here on this video. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.